So John Borrows, Borrows, Giganos Indigenicas, Kegedonce.
And do you want to start by talking about sort of your trajectory in terms of education?
Sure. I think the trajectory really started with my mother. When I was a kid, she would bring us here all the time. She grew up just over my shoulder here at the back of the bay, and she would just take us into the bush and take us out in the land and take us out in the water. And she was a person that was encouraging, is encouraging, and a person that really wanted me to see the detail in life. So she would spend a lot of time talking about what she learned about as she was fishing in this bay, as she was rabbit hunting up by this bluff, as she, had to piece together a life. It was a hard life at the time, and I got an appreciation for the beauty of the world around me just through her eyes. And then, we eventually went further afield. So we would go on all these back roads around the peninsula here, and she would talk about where my grandmas and grandpas had relationships with the territory. For instance, there's a little island just across the way here. There's burial sites at the foot of what's called Kokokoominis, or Hay Island. And she used to go there with her father and got all the stories about those folks and what they did. And there's another island just off to my right here too. At the edge of the island is a old war site where there was Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe people fighting with one another during the Beaver Wars, 1760s area. And you can still see human remains there, as well as many, many arrowheads. And so she would take me and show me that kind of thing. But mostly it was about flowers and birds and plants, and the animals were around. And it was just beautiful to understand this world through those creatures. They have so much to teach us. And so she was teaching me, but as she was teaching me, I was also learning that the earth has a lot to teach us as well.
I'm sorry,
That's okay.
John, I'm not getting.
Okay. I'm glad we.
This says it's getting.
Yeah.
But I'm not hearing anything on my headset. One second. Another thing, it doesn't matter if we're recording because I truly. For places where working on indigenizing policy or decolonial policy. And my attitude in the last year has been it's simple. Give us our land back. Don't tell us what to do.
Yeah.
What at our level
are we good
about doing this in an indigenous way? I keep telling you, they're really adamant that they don't step on my voice. Don't step on it. I'm very adamant that they're in this circle together. So
Great.
they're staying at my Aunt Joyce's house.
Oh, fabulous.
So they're hanging out with my cousin Kenny.
Good.
And
Ken's
that aspect's
amazing.
important to me because to indigenize something, we just gotta sit as people.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I really admire and respect about you, John, which is different than some of our teachers, is not only do you have so much knowledge, you have the Western knowledge, you have a lot of our traditional knowledge, but you're very, very kind and humble with it. And it's different. And I think, and this, I can't speak for you, but from what I feel from you is that you continue to do a lot of work on yourself before you. And that's different than Basil, who had all this knowledge, but I just saw this man cave into himself.
Mm-hmm.
It was only in his last years that he started to really speak truth, right?
Yeah.
But we hold Basil on this pedestal, and then they put Basil down here, and my thing is always trying to be like he was a human being.
Yeah.
But a lot of us don't know because his name was so prolific. When I grew up, I only knew Basil as that really cranky man.
Yeah,
He's a really good writer. I wrote this thing about my grandpa. I just think he's a really good writer, but he's just always so crabby.
Yeah.
So we'd always go visit him and try to talk to him.
And yeah.
But that's what's different about you, John. And I think that's, and I know we haven't actually talked a lot, but I've admired you for years, and I told that story to your mom. When I heard you on the radio, John, it's everything I needed to hear at that time. Because I was in university and I was so struggling with was this going to validate who, I know and I believe in who we are, and I didn't want to be crushed.
Yeah.
When I heard you, I was like, fucking right, we can do this. I'm from Nehashingane. I'm like, you proved it, and we all have different paths and journeys. I grew up half here, half there, and there's this idea that there's one story for all of us, and it's not.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm interested in getting to know you. And
Yeah.
the thing is, our families are so close. As soon as you came up to talk to your mom, she started talking about Nokomis. It just felt in my heart.
Yeah. I mean, we're related, right? It's just so
You're my
close.
cousin.
Exactly.
I kept telling him, it's like, I got this hotshot cousin. He's a lawyer. That's what he said.
Okay.
This hotshot cousin. He's a lawyer. And then when in the New York Times, when they quoted you and they said he's from Cape Croker, and I thought, how many lawyers?
Yeah.
Anyway, well, okay, maybe if we can ask you to actually back up and kind
Sure.
of redo it if you don't
Sure,
mind.
that's right. So John Borrows, Borrows, Giganos Indigenous, and you were asking me about my first teachers, and that's definitely my mother. She is just a beautiful human being. I remember a couple of years ago we were at Chippewa of the Rama, and all of these young lawyers were there for an Indigenous Bar Association conference, and they said, "Come speak with us. We'd love for you to speak with us." And she said, "No, I can't do that. I just don't feel confident in those ways." And she said, "No, come speak with us. We really want you to speak with us." And she said, "Well, I really even barely got out of grade 8. I ran away from home, so I didn't have to go to residential school. I just don't feel like I could do that." I said, "No, come and speak with us." And then she said, I can't. I'm just an encourager of young people." And I said, "That's exactly what we need." And when I heard her say that, I realized that that's what she was to me, an encourager. And it really helped me. And I was probably like 35 when I first heard her say that. I said that that's what I want to be too, because I received it so beautifully from her. And I feel so good when I can encourage others. And I think where I received that encouragement from her is both in her words, but then just the beauty that's here that she helped me to see is encouragement, right? You look at the bluff behind us here. How can you not be inspired? What an incredible teacher. The water here on Watton is just so calm and gives us that sense of how we can be inside. Of course, there's other moments that it rages, and there's purpose to that. It helps to shape the shoreline and helps to cleanse the earth, and that there's so much teaching that lies in just the beauty of the world around us. So when I was a young boy, she would take us out into the forest, and she would teach us about the little flowers, or having to scrape by, catching rabbits just on the bluff here behind us again, or fishing out in this bay. She had to just row and row and row to pull her meal in. And so she really appreciated anything that was sort of given to her from the gifts that are just so plentiful here. And so, yeah, I learned from my mother as an encourager, but then she wanted me to look through her to see where she receives her encouragement, which is, this beautiful earth. We have a word for teaching called kikino, which means to point towards and take direction from. But you can also say akino. Eke is earth. Akino is to point towards the earth and take direction from the earth. So it's our teacher, right? If we look there, then we'll receive the ideas, the messages that we need to help us through good and bad times. And that's an amazing thing to think about, the opportunities that are just at our feet. These rocks we're on here, 440 million years old. We just look in pick one up and you can see these little fossils that are found here. This was at the equator 440 million years ago, right? Imagine the travel of this little rock to come from the equator to here. And we're just on this place that was full of life. And then you think about these bluffs behind us here, right, formed in that time, just in that warm, shallow sea, much like the Great Barrier Reef is now. All these little swimmers were here, all these little plants, and you've got reminders of this ancient life just when we're sitting here on the shore.
Yeah, bring it back. Bring it back. Right here? Even further. Okay. See that? Good. Yeah. I'm so happy you brought that. You sound like my old man. He'd go up and down the shore, and that's what he'd always talk about. And just point to it. And we got so interested. I just thought this was a fun fact for you because you talked about that shallow sea.
Yes.
The largest turtle we've ever found in, in the fossil record is in that shallow sea
Mm.
in that place we now call,
Yeah.
Turtle Island.
Yeah.
And it's one of these things. My grandmother said the same thing. She says everything's a story. And when I came home one day from school, she said, "What did you learn?" I said, "We learned about like the sediment and that you can like as you go down, you can kind of like go through time."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, like the rocks, like in the rocks, you can tell like all through the ages. And my uncle Miss like got verklempt, and she said, my dad used to always say, and my mom used to always say that the grandfathers hold the story of everything.
Yeah.
And then when I told her that, she's like, "That's what you're learning."
Yeah.
But I had her as my encouragement to make me look beyond.
Mm-hmm.
But that also makes sense. They seem to be cut from the same cloth.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so powerful, right? To think about that turtle, the back of the turtle is where life comes from with our creation story. And you think about those shallow seas where all these animals were, struggling to live in the water, and yet they found refuge in one another and counsel together. And then we have these reminders that are just here with us, and they just speak to us through eons of time. And it's so incredible to think about the climate change that we're going through, and to know that we've got these stories of climate change that come from 440 million years ago. And of course, this was covered by glaciers too. The rocks at Cape Croker here are different than any other rocks you'd find in most of Ontario, because this was sitting under like a kilometer of ice. Like you just imagine what that would look like here. But when it rebounded, right, this is what came up. Whereas in other parts of the peninsula, they didn't get this older part coming up. And so we've got, this other like 12,000 year history of climate change. We've got the 440 million year history in the equator. But think of this land moving with the glaciers and how dramatic that would be to bring this up to where we are. And, our people just coming in that time and sharing so many stories about that flood, the giant beaver that Lenore Kijik talks about that lived between Manitoulin and Tobermory area, and all the evidence that we find of our again searching for the land and searching to have a relationship with the land, with the animals. Uh,
How did you find the trajectory from the traditional teaching that came from your mother, and what was it like when you began to put that together with the kind of I mean, you're now an academic, the
yeah,
extraordinarily systematic world of that. Has it been something that you just kind of swam in easily, or was it a challenge? Or
that's a great question. I lived on a farm as well when I was a kid, and my mother, we rescued red-tailed hawks, and I saw the circle of life with, cattle and just the crops that we had. And I just realized that things have a resilience or a return or a cycle to them. And so whenever I feel like I'm at the bottom of a cycle, I know that there's another season, there's another uh, change that can come around. So when I went off to university, I have to say I was just really like a kid in a candy shop. It was more opportunity to be able to learn about the beauty of what people are thinking and learning and hoping for. And then, of course, I found the discouragement that's there too, with what we've experienced as Indigenous peoples, but of course, studying history with world wars and thinking through the challenges of what you get, and it challenges you.
I've always wanted to ask this question, and it's a question I think because I feel this way. Because you didn't grow up in the community,
Right?
but neither did I,
Yeah,
but neither did Dad.
yeah,
Some of us go and fly away, and some of us come back. But then there's also the things that come up in the community feeling like that. Because when I was young, here I really felt like I came into myself because I was really close with everyone that was my age here. though I moved away, I was still close with them.
Yeah.
We were so tight knit. But they taught me like a level of confidence in the way of being that came from no one's gonna show you your place or give you your place. We'll always just give you space for you just to take it on your own. But it's because we went through so much. Like when I was, my dad. I don't know if you know my mom yet.
I don't think so. Okay.
I don't think you've met before.
Yeah.
But they're both such wonderful human beings. But because they also both grew up here, they had mentalities about us growing up that were really different. One of them was when we were like 12, 13, we were like grown-ups.
Yeah.
And not to the extent, like an extent we could do anything, but the level of, I think, responsibility, but like that we were left to our own devices to figure things out. And so it's what I'm really trying to get at is talking about, I know we have a community because it's here.
Yeah.
I feel it. But I also know that this is a reserve, and we don't always have a community here.
Yeah.
Because a community isn't a noun. It's a language. It's a verb.
Verb.
It's a thing that we do.
Yeah.
But how do you feel about that? Because there's no way that you could grow up around here or be around here without knowing the intense amount of things that happen here. When I was growing up in it, I never noticed it because it happened to everyone I knew.
Yeah.
And for my generation, it's really hard to talk about. Like by the time I got to university, John, like not only had so few of my friends graduated high school, a half of them are not alive. They were gone, and I had blamed. I was smart, always smart, so I knew that this wasn't right. It's not normal, and I just had this burning sense that someone wanted this to happen and was okay with my friends going. And when I got to university, this is what I found. Long ramble, but I really needed to share that because when I think about you, it's like I said, I didn't get to know you, but that's where I feel like you're this other side of the coin where Basil had all this information, but you're out there and you're helping share it. And it has gone to people. It has, and I can tell you, not just me. John, people are so impressed, and I'm like, he's my cousin. I try not to name drop.
Yeah, it's true. There's beauty and pain here. It's just all intermingled. And I think what my mom did is, she came into the world with her hand joined to her mother and father. And there was all of that pain that came to her. There was alcoholism, and there was, challenges with abuse, and there was, the way things were happening in the schools. And so she had that come to her. But as I mentioned, she also had the love of the land and the water. She had the appreciation for what these all teach us. And so that came through her. And there she was with her hand joined to that generation. Then I'm born. I'm then connected to her hand. And what she tried to do was have all of that garbage stop here as much as she could and allow to pass through as much good as she possibly could. Right? So there she is with hands between generations as a transitional figure, really. And, to bear that pain and to have that lodge and say, that's it, that's going to stop. That's not going to go to my kids. And then to be the recipient with my hand held to my mother of all that incredible beauty is, she did it. And it's incredible. And I think of my aunt next door here, Aunt Norma. She tried to do that. And then my Uncle Norman had a real struggle just living next door there. His kids, 3 of them are gone now, and they're my age. And then Uncle Howard, who's just at the head of the bay here, he has 4 amazing children. We went to a land claims meeting yesterday at Saugeen. He just encouraged me all the way there and back yesterday. And so, that kind of community with my mother and with those aunts and uncles, it just incredible. But, I was also bullied when I was here and
And that's
scared.
why I wanted to ask the question, because growing up, we bullied each other,
Yeah,
and I think it's such a thing.
yeah,
Because I think, because we used to fight a lot when
yeah,
young, and I'm not a fighter. So
yeah.
what my fighting? The reason I'm such good friends with Nimki guys is because Nimki can fight. Yeah, but my friend Nimki would always defend me. But
Yeah,
I remember we used to get into scraps, but it was like that. As we grew up, we're like, why are we hurting each
yeah,
other like this? And especially when we like actually love each other.
yeah. And I certainly felt that bullying. I certainly felt being a part of that fighting side. And I suppose part of what got me through that again is just Uncle Norman and Aunt Norma and Uncle Howard and my mother and also music. Music was a big thing. I'd hang around in these shores and I have my 8-track player or cassette player and just really, channel beautiful, creative music. It just was a part of what got me through as well. So yeah, when I left the reserve to go to university, I carried some of that hurt, but I also just carried that beauty that my mother helped to instill, and I still love music to this day. It's
And how did you, where did the whole thing of putting together indigenous law and non-indigenous law, how did that come to you? Was it a gradual discovery, or was it a kind of eureka moment?
so I went to law school and I was kind of lost in law school. I really didn't know what I was doing there, except I was just trying to keep my options open. I really didn't know what life was going to hold. And I found it really dislocating because it was impersonal and it was not human scale. But I just kept at it. But when I did my master's of law, which I was called a genealogy of law, and I did 7 generations of my family, from my great 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 grandmother and grandfather right down to the present day. And I talked to my Aunt Irene Akawenzi, and she told me our history through the generations. And I talked to my Uncle Fred Jones, and he told me our history through the generations. And getting that oral history, that okay, it's like now I've got a picture of that puzzle on the front of the box. And then I could go into the archives and go, here's a piece of that puzzle. Where does that go? And here's another piece. So with the oral history, I was able to then go into the archives and find the documentary history of what they had presented in that way. And so my great 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 grandpa, I carry his name, Giganos. He did so much to help our people. There was a lot of war in 1763 and whatnot, and beyond, and then during the War of 1812. And he kind of came up the coast from what's now Walpole Island up to Chiefs Point over by. Yeah, he was. I don't know where he was born. No. I think he came from. Some people say that he's Shawnee, which is the Ohio Valley area.
That would make sense.
Yeah, and because so that was the generation, and his he was Tecumseh's our great 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 uncle, and Tecumseh was married to a woman named Wasegaboa, and Wasegaboa was Giganos's sister, and so that relationship that Tecumseh had with Giganos came up this way to protect the women and children and those that were vulnerable. And then his brother-in-law, Tecumseh, went off to war. And, Tecumseh just traveled way down to like Georgia and Carolinas and through the Ohio Valley area up into this area. So anyways, what I learned in that generation was that we had a lot of challenges that Giganos faced and Tecumseh faced, but we made large circles, as you were talking about before. Like, we had our territory, but we would loop and go to other places, learn what we could, come back home, learn what we could, come back home. It was always that process of seeing that our territory is like a nest that you need to have protected from the elements so that there's a safety when those eggs are laid, they're not going to be destroyed. But you can't just live in that nest, right? You have to, there's insects over there and there's worms over there, right? You need an entire territory beyond the nest. And I think that's what I learned from Giganos and Tecumseh as I was hearing these stories from my great, 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 my hearing these stories.
Yeah, you're saying Tecumseh,
Yeah.
or so you're saying Diego. Well, what about but Nawash?
Yeah, so Nawash also fought in the War of 1812.
Nimke was sitting around one day. This is years ago. We were getting all goosed up. We're probably like 17. And he stands up and he goes, "I just have one question. Does anyone know who Nawash is or where he is or
Yeah.
where they are?"
Yeah.
And we're like, "The Chippewas and Nawash." And he's like, "Where are all the Nawashes at?"
Yeah.
So this is another question I wanted to ask you because you know a lot of this. It's like we were almost adults before we even asked that question. Like, why are we here?
Yeah.
And so Sid was talking. I'm gonna piece together all the little bits that we got.
Yeah.
Dad's talking about like like our traditional ways and what hunting looks like and what how he grows up and what he wants to see. My Aunt Joyce is talking about the relationship with the church and how we can still have this, how we can do something in a healing way.
Yeah.
And I and so that's come up. And then Kyle was talking about, so Sid's son, he's talking about he's totally against all the systems and he feels so repressed right now. And he just feels like Canada is his enemy.
Yeah.
And I was like, I've had that feeling all my life. I wanted to be Canadian, but every time I say that, they would just remind me they don't want me. And he's having this moment where he's having a hard time because he doesn't want his children to grow up the way he had in this vacuum of not knowing his name, not
Yeah.
knowing his language, not knowing these things. We got Nimke, who's like really in the middle. He knows he's just figuring stuff out. He knows he's got a lot, but he also doesn't know where to go. And I always said this about Kyle. He's a dreamer. Nimke, if you give him an opportunity, he'll take it. Go over to his house 5 o'clock in the morning, be like, "You want to do sweat?" And be like, "Yeah, I'm there."
Yeah.
Kyle, you gotta drag him for years. You gotta prep him. And what my Nokomis is talking about is she didn't really know what to say.
Yeah.
She's 89 years old, and as she was speaking, I was seeing that's because I was holding her hand. And there's so much that I realized that my Nokomis has never ever said, and this is the first time she's ever been interviewed. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot that she not only won't say, she doesn't think to say.
Yeah.
Because she's like lived this full life. Well, what you said is to encourage us that we have a sense of who we are and that we need to be a community.
Mm-hmm.
Your mom was just talking about going and helping Nokomis out.
Yes. She talked about it before you came this evening.
How important that was.
Yeah.
Nokomis was 16 when she had her first kid.
Yeah.
In a situation that wasn't really so great.
Yeah.
But that amount, it helps. And I'm sorry, I feel really verklempt talking to you more than anyone I've talked to, John, because I feel it's weird, we've talked the least, but I feel most comfortable talking with you. Because a lot of people I've grown up with here, it's like we don't know each other because we knew each other all our life.
Mm-hmm.
That's something I learned in the lodge. The real relationships are the people you're always learning more about.
Yeah.
That's why Laurence is so cool. You should talk to Laurence. He keeps Kenny described him as Forrest Gump. So
Yeah.
I said I've never seen the film.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So we've been asking, like, what would you want to say? Prime Minister, would you want to do this? What I want to ask you, John, is if you could say something to our community as Nawash, and then also as our community as Anishinaabe people, and then talk to our community as the big. One of the things I always try to explain about our teachings is our teachings are so based on all of us.
Yeah.
Our teachings don't exclude other nations. We just know that we do things differently.
Yeah.
That's why I keep trying to bring you guys into the fold.
Yeah.
So yeah, what would be some of the things that?
I think the most important thing I would say, I can't actually describe, so I'll just say it this way, which is there's just beauty around us and inside us. And I know there's a lot of other things there too. And it's giving people the benefit of the doubt, recognizing them for who they are and their holistic parts, but seeing the good that's there. I've got a couple of sayings I really like. Nuance is sacred. I think that's so powerful. And you can see someone's beauty and not, you know, neglect or ignore those other parts of them. It's still who they are, but there's beauty there. And if you can find that nuance there, that's so incredible. The other thing I like to say is, beware the danger of a single story, right? We're just so complicated. And if we can triangulate or see how the stories relate to one another, we'll find each other there. And I really appreciate that because that's what's here too, right? Just think of the shades of color right now as the evening falls, right? If that's not a lesson in nuance, to think about all the grayscale, it's just subtle. Or you think about how the ecology is put together. There's just so many stories that are intertwining here, and that's here too, right? So what I would say is, it's find that beauty, find that nuance, find the possibility for people to be many things, not just one thing. And yeah, it just gives you peace when you can find that.
Can I go back to something you
Yes.
said earlier, because it says so. I thought it said so beautifully what I think teaching is about when you said you just like to encourage
Yeah.
young people.
Yeah.
Can you expand on it? Because I mean I believe that I always tell my students teaching is not, it's not a profession, it's a vocation.
Yeah.
You're called to teach, and it's
You
not a
know,
profession.
what I love about teaching is how interesting the students are, right? They bring so many different gifts. They struggle, but they also have many, many things that they teach me along the way. And I just want to keep learning. And the students help me to learn. And you learn about what you're not doing properly, and they bring that out. And I think, thank you for that. Like, I could be stuck in my ways if I just thought I was the expert and here I've got something to impart. It's not what I hope to do. I want to continue to find ways to be just alive.
That's how
To
I know you're not. You actually got it, because that's what all our elders say who really know. They're always like, this is a little bit I know, and then they just drop all this knowledge. And the ones that don't know anything are always the ones that are like, let me tell you.
Mm, yeah, yeah, yeah. I think, there's just so much to learn from, and that gives me hope then, right? Because I find that I can grow from the stories and successes and helping people through the struggles that they're a part of, and just try to walk together with that. It's huge. My little granddaughter is crying in the background right now. Her name is Akika, 2 months old. Amazing, right?
And what do you see for her in the future?
You know, her name, Aki, is the earth. Ka is the abundance or the fullness of earth. That's what I hope for her.
Just the earth, that root word, right? Gijik,
It's right.
pride, Jesus,
Exactly.
wash God, go around.
Kiwashka, that's right.
That gi is like that. So then it's the same in the aki.
Yeah,
She's that. She's to bring that circle.
that's right. And I've got another daughter called Wisea, which is bright and shining, right? And so these names give me that hope for the future. There's going to be bright, shining, as long as the sun shines and the grass grows and the river flows, right? That's in their names. Yeah.
I'm struck by the interviews we've done this last couple of days with Jesus' friends. When they're struggling with who they are, they're struggling with their family, they're having children and trying to manage everything. And in some cases, express that they don't have support of parents who are hurting and dysfunctional and suffering addictions and having other issues. And I got a sense that they felt like they were doing it themselves. And I wondered, is there hope for the community to rally around and lift each? Do you see that happening?
I do see that happening. I know there's lots of challenges here, and I don't want to overlook them for a second. But when I was a young kid, there was a lot of violence here with gunshots and people just beating one another up. And then our elders of that generation went into AA, right? And they became free of alcohol. And so there was Geraldine that just lives next door here, and there was Uncle Fred, and there was a good bunch of people that supported one another, and they changed what we did as a community. When I started university, there might have been sort of 4 or 5 people from Cape Coker who had gone to university before that. But with my generation, there was a couple of hundred people that went off to university. And I point to Geraldine and Uncle Fred and Andrew. They supported one another, and I know that there was challenges there too. But the fact that they weren't drinking meant that their kids could grow up in a better way as a result of that.
And I think that was one piece, right? They started the healing.
Yes.
Still a lot they didn't know.
Yeah.
One of the things I truly believe is one of the problems in our communities, we have no continuity. Because yes, we learn these things, and these things are getting better, but we're not seeing it.
Yeah.
Like you're talking about growing, you don't see it from
Yeah.
But one of the things I really feel is going to help this community is when we can have a sense of continuity. That's what Sid was talking about, our history.
Yes.
Because I never knew what my dad did. I never knew what my uncle Sid did. I never knew what they were doing. And the same with my mom. And it took a long time. And when they shared that, the world made more sense.
Yeah.
And that sense of continuity is that we are passing things down. And that, I've seen it. I got it. Because things are being passed down to me. That's not just trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Well, and Sid was saying that, though, for example, he learned from his father how to hunt and how to fish and how to survive, but he never knew the philosophy that made all the, he never knew the whole thing around it.
And that speaks
and
to
he
that.
was saying how the bringing back of a lot of that knowledge recently has been this really powerful.
Well, so that point about intergenerational is that point of that master's thesis. 7 generations, I saw all the challenges that they had with Canada, and I chronicled them, but I also saw there was resilience in each one of those generations. That was the message of the thesis, is that despite the garbage we went through, we survived, and we're here on land as people, yes, struggling, but there are lessons that come through that generation. Or you also think about the intergenerational with the hands joined together. If you actually go like that, that's the wampum belt relationship, linking arms together, right? We signed treaties with people that said we're going to support one another as Indigenous peoples and also link our arms together with people that come from other parts of the world.
That's where I also feel like we're getting, because Nokomis is our biggest strength and our biggest weakness, not because it's because it's inherent in us.
Yeah.
It's something we can't separate from ourselves. And so she asked me what my biggest strength was, and I said, I think I care. I love everything.
Yeah.
And she says, that's why your heart hurts a lot.
Yeah.
You care. And I think it's like one of the reasons that we struggle so much too is growing up is because we were like this. We were linking arms like this. So when someone went down, we're all feeling it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we had all of us to come back up. And I think it is changing because every generation that's going down, I feel like it's getting less, and the violence and the hurt and the pain is less and less.
Yeah.
And more and more people experience direct love. You got to experience love in your life. I always wonder about Nokomis, talking to Dave. When you hear her life story, I don't understand why she just isn't a broken person.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm loved.
Yeah.
I'm loved.
Yeah. And that's the thing, right? The love is the big part of that. Just to, you talked about who is our community. Well, our community are our aunts and our uncles. Our community are our parents. Our community is the past generations. We're in community with them. The community is the water and the sky and the rocks and the earth.
What about a community with the settlers, with others? How does that need to change?
So I talked about my great grandpa Giganos. His son was Peter Giganos Jones, and he signed a treaty as well with people. The way I understand that treaty is we invited people to this land to live in accordance with our laws. That is, to live, when he put his little otter totem on there, to live as we would live as otter or bear or pike, all our clans that are there. And those invitations for people in the treaty is to live like the sun, right? Which gives this light and warmth. To live like the water, which sustains us, gives it's just to live like the grass, which is just ever in this cycle of replenishment, regeneration. And I don't think people understand that about the treaties. I think they see the treaties as a document that's about parceling out land and you can live here and we can live there. But it's like, no, come and live in accordance with Anishinaabe law. Learn intergenerationally what it requires to live in this place in a good way. And I do find that when people hear that message, there's something that gives them a greater sense of purpose than,
I've never heard that before. I've never heard someone put it that way.
Yeah.
It's something I felt when it reminds me of is the Great Law of Peace.
Yes.
When when, when they're going around, and when they speak in the language, when you're actually speaking the language, what they're saying is like the Creator didn't even think this could happen. And that's what, when you're telling this story, it's like our people couldn't even contemplate that idea
Mhm.
of that immense level of, well, the way I see it, it's like a greed
Mhm.
for everything. And yeah, it feels very similarly, like where we couldn't, in my imagination, I don't think our people could conceive that life could be like that. And on top of that, even as it's happening so quickly and also so slowly, it's imperceptible.
Yeah.
Because every generation, it's not like it happened all at once. Every generation grew up in a different
Mhm.
climate because the world was rapidly changing for when thousands of years. It had always been changing, but in a way that we could follow.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's right. Just understanding change, understanding continuity as a part of change as well is our conversation here. And with those treaties that are rooted in the earth and the water and in the sky, what we're trying to do is understand how we can be in a treaty relationship with this, right? How can we be in reciprocity? How can we be in a place where we're continually renewing the sources of life? Not just physically renewing those sources of life, but the emotional, the psychological, like the love, the kindness, the respect, the honesty, the truth, the wisdom, right? Those grandmother and grandfather teachings that we have. That is a part of, I think, what we have. And it is here, and we just have to find ways to continue to learn and bring that here.
Nodwan Mishkade is his name, his
Yeah.
Anishinaabe name. I've never talked to him about this. He comes up to me the other night and he says, what I want us to do is we need a constitution.
Mm-hmm.
He says, we need a constitution that like puts the land first, but he's just rambling because he can't, and what he wants, he's trying, he's like, I wish I could be more articulate, but he says, how do we do that? And he's like, I want to learn how to do that.
Yeah.
And I told him this word that I learned from a fella, and I was like, Chinagawin,
Yeah.
right? And I was like, Chippewa, the Thames has this, and they call
Yes.
it that same thing.
Yes.
Chinagawin. And he wants to do it right, and he says, like, I'm not going to go full force. He says, I want to go ceremony, I want to go fast, and I want to do this slow.
Yeah.
But we have to start now.
Yeah. So this is our constitution, right? This is how we are constituted. If you think about this as a verb, right? How are we constituted? Of the water, of the rocks, of the trees, of the sky. That's Chinaakanagewin. That's the great guided way of making decisions. So constitution is not a noun. It's not just something you put on a page. It's a verb. And as a verb, when you think about how we are constituted, you can sort of point to these lessons that are surrounding us all over the place. And then you can put that into ceremony, or you could put that into a classroom and teach someone Anishinaabe law. You could put it into a family. There are different scales that this could operate. And even if Canada never lives by that constitution, you and your loved ones could live by that
And
constitution.
I think that's a more important lesson. And because when I talk to Nimki and I have always grown up in ceremony. Doesn't mean we know, it just means we've always been learning.
Yeah.
But our best friend Kyle, he thinks that he knows.
Mm.
He's getting really stuck. And what you just said there is exactly what I'm going to go home and tell him. I'm going to show him this because he needs to hear that he believes so strongly in all of this, but he feels stupid for it. Because he feels he's constantly being reminded by others that that's not real.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's still growing, he's alone, You know, like it's just him and his partner and his children, and for him that's his whole world
Mm-hmm.
right now. But he needs to hear that, and it means something when it comes from you,
Mm-hmm.
and not just because you're a lawyer, not just because you've done that, because you're a community member that I don't think he's ever heard a community member speak the way that you do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not because they don't exist, but it's like we don't know what we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't know to go to these people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I try as much as I can to go visit these people now, because before they go, our time is precious.
Yes, yes. Yeah, if people could know that, right? This is the source of possibility. And you can do that in your home. I'm like I talked about my mother. She didn't have a lot of support in some ways, but she had this sense of, I'm not going to let all the poison go through to my children. I'm just going to try as much as possible to have the beauty go through and let the poison lodge here. Now that's hurt her, right? She carries a lot of pain because of that. But it's something she decided she was going to do and has just really made our lives so much better. It's not like things didn't get passed through that aren't as good as they should be.
You know, and this is what I meant to make a point too, John, is you get talked about a lot by the world, but one of the things that we do is we don't see people, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's really easy to be like John Burroughs. And long as I told you, put someone on pedestals, it's like putting them down because you're not seeing
Yeah.
them for who they are. And I get that sense that you feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you put yourself here, and if you don't put yourself here, doesn't mean we can't,
Mm-hmm.
but you speak it with a lot of humility, and but it's that like to. I just learned that lesson, and I thought that was always really powerful to bring it into this space. But you have so many gifts on both sides, and you're talking about how you just felt so uplifted when you went to Saugeen.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I feel when we're around not just our culture, but the people who have connected to this. Is everyone's just going around being like, "You're so great." No, you're so great. Like that's how people flex at ceremony. Everyone's just like, "You're really you know so much." No, you know so much. It's a different kind of way of being in the world.
John, before the battery died, the
Battery
dies,
has died on the.
it died
mic.
on that.
Can we move this closer to John?
And I know it's the light. Just, you know, as I said, we started when we first proposed. I first proposed this project. It was before pandemic. It was before all the news, you know, hit. Not that it wasn't known,
Yeah.
but about residential schools and children's graves. And what is it you would tell people? I know that there are communities that are hurting terribly, and they talk about their hurt. How can reconciliation or healing take place through schooling or through education when the educational system has committed such heinous crimes against not just people but children?
Yeah. Well, it's truth and reconciliation. And so it's learning the truth of that, not looking away from the pain. I feel a lot of pain. I'm sure a lot of people feel a lot of pain. And sometimes when we feel that, we just want to block it. But I can understand why people would do that because it's so potentially crushing. But if you can find a way to face the pain and not get crushed by it, then it allows you to recognize yourself in all of those folks, both those that have caused pain and those that have been hurt and are still in pain. That is to say, the humanity of this is that we're all in this together. And there's such an important message here to understand that this pain is still going on, right? Colonialism is not something that's in the past, it's a present event. And 64% of kids in care in British Columbia, for instance, are Indigenous kids right now. 80 to 90% of the people in prison in Saskatchewan are Indigenous right now. That pain isn't just residential school era, it's also this era too. But just because you feel pain doesn't mean that's all you can feel. Right? Again, nuance is sacred. Beware the danger of a single story. Sometimes by feeling pain, you actually then appreciate those moments of joy and possibility because you see the contrast, you feel the potential differences that are there. I know I'm not expressing this in the way that I'd like to say this, but I'm really trying to get at the idea that if we're to get through this, we have to get through this in a way that draws from just eyes wide open to all the beauty and all the hurt.
I love the image of your mother
Yeah.
saying, "It's going to stop here.
Mm-hmm.
The bad stuff's going to stop here."
Mm-hmm. And people pay a price for that.
John,
She did.
Honestly, I thought I was kind of like putting you up on this pedestal, and I was like, it's not going to be this thing.
Oh, you saw it.
But no,
You saw the movie?
honestly, John, I appreciate it so much.
Thank
the way
you.
that you speak.
Thank you.
But
See the movie?
with me, but that's exactly what I wanted to say to you, John. Is like right on this road and right on the shore. This is actually one of the hardest places for me to come because it's like so much happened right here, and to hear these things of what you're saying. And one of the things is I struggle so much with just feeling so hurt, but I wouldn't let myself feel it. And it's in these last couple of years I've just like stopped trying to push it out and feel it. And then just as you said that, Greg pointed to Nokomis right there, and I was like, Graham has never forgot me. Like my Nokomis has never forgot me. And I was just thinking about that, and it's true. Like all this hurt I feel from like not having like the people I love the most and want to be here has instilled in me like this deep feeling and love for our people. Like that's why, even if I don't know who they're not, that's why every single person here is precious to me.
Yeah.
And even the ones that are so not so good, I have a deep love for them because somewhere, it's like what you're talking about. I know somewhere there's this beauty.
Yeah.
And what you said, it all means a lot, John. And not for the interview, for myself. Like, I love this place so much, but I struggle so much to come here because I love it.
Yeah.
And I miss my friends so much. But you know, like one of the things last time I went to visit them at the graveyard, it was like they're part of the thing that I love the most.
Yeah.
And I was like, I always felt bad. I didn't go see my friend for years. I went to the funeral and never went back. And when I went to go see him, it wasn't hard.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I felt bad, but I was like, I've always loved this land, and you're part of the thing that I love the most, and you were the people that I love the most, and it's making me feel that we have to feel it, but it's okay, and I know that because I'm going to ceremony a long time.
Yeah.
I know that like that growth is in that. It's like you go into ceremony, you cry a bunch. It just sounds like everyone's dying in there.
That's right.
And then they open it up and everyone's like, oh.
Life. That's right. That's it, right? You have to be able to cry and weep and laugh and embrace.
But that means something too coming from a man, because it's one of the things that's where Gregory's healing, because I was like, my dad almost exploded not letting it out. And it's like he's just like me. He loves and feels so deeply.
Yeah.
But it's like, I just see so many of our like old guys just like, you're going to explode, guys. Just let it out.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Well, I'm so grateful you're here this evening because I feel that love to you and I feel that beauty in the questions you're answering and asking. And I just feel like we're just amongst our ancestors right now. Yeah. And, they are what you see, but they're also what we carry here. Like my grandma and my grandpa, I can picture them being on this shore. And I know that they weren't just the only generation that walked this shore, right?
And I like that you extended the timeline, because it's something that I really want us to do, because even when we talk about Indigenous history, start 1492.
Yeah.
We're like, it didn't just come into existence when everyone landed.
Yeah.
And it is this, like, a long history that's ancient, that goes even beyond us being Anishinaabe into a place that, like, well, we've always been Anishinaabe, but Nokomis says, like, repeats it from the creation story. It's like, she always, when she tells creation stories, she says, creation stories are all true, but it's not because it's about the creation of the world. No one knows how the world was made. And she says, even with everything we know, we still don't know how everything came to be. And she says the creation stories are true because it's how we come to know ourselves in the world.
And what I love about the creation story is that it was the council of the animals together trying to figure out what to do when they were floating in the water and they didn't know if there's anywhere you could get your foot. How'd they solve it? They talked with one another, right? That is so brilliant. Like, it's a process. It's not just like, here's the answer. It's a process that they've taught us.
Oh, you're making me feel so much better about things because it's going to